Hi, I'm Dr. Susan Thompson. I'm the clinical coordinator for Old Dominion University's graduate counseling program. And I wanted to spend some time talking a little bit about one model of clinical supervision, or at least supervision. But I want to give some other information. Again, I'm the clinical coordinator. My current assistant is Hannah Bain, and we have a collaborator, another doc student, on this project, and that is Jody Slaughter. Thanks to both of them for their help with this. So one model of supervision, and this is one that I have used as I talk about supervision for many years, and it's based on adaptive counseling and therapy. And for those of you who may have heard of Ken Blanchard and situational leadership, it's actually the model that has been dropped from situational leadership into counseling. I discovered it when I was a doctoral student. I had one of my doc student supervisors introduce it to me, and for me it makes a lot of sense. So I'm hoping it'll make sense for you. This is the situational leadership model. So the quadrants are based on directiveness, and this is about support. So the way that our numbers work, this is less directive and this is more directive. This is less support and this is more support. And I'll talk about some of those pieces here in a minute, but it's helpful to see what the model looks like, and then we'll go from there. The first quadrant is actually here. This is quadrant 1. And that's where you might have a supervisee who's just started out. They need more direction. They need more information. They need a little bit less support. They still need support, but what they need is for you to let them know what their roles and responsibilities are and what their tasks are. So for this quadrant, it says it's high task, low readiness, and I'll get to that here in a few minutes. As this particular model was, this is situational leadership, but as it's applied to counseling here in a few minutes, I'll tell you more. But the original model then, the second quadrant is about coaching. And as an employee in this model has a little bit more experience, but they don't know exactly what's expected, they are willing to do whatever the work is, then your role as a leader changes. That's really why this is called situational leadership. You lead based on what the situation is and what your employee needs are. This next quadrant is about coaching then. It's where your supervisee or your employee, for the original model, needs a lot of direction and a lot of support, and that's where the coaching comes in. The third quadrant is here. And for this is an employee who's been around for a little bit, who maybe knows what to do, needs a little bit more support, and can start to do but needs a little bit of structure. So that's the low direction, a lot of support, and ironically it's called supporting. The last quadrant is delegating. And how about that? So with this particular one, you may be even yourself this kind of employee, someone who knows what is expected of them and just goes and does it. So chances are your supervisor says, go and do. You may not have that kind of supervisor, but I wish that you had that kind of supervisor. The key concepts in this particular model is a definition of leadership. Leadership then is defined as the process of influencing another person. And situational leadership then is based on the principle that there's no best leadership style. sort of like with counseling, we say, what research says, there's a best style of, or theory to use that's cognitive behavioral. But chances are you as a counselor use a variety of theories or a variety of techniques depending on what's going on with your student or client. And the same then is true for this particular model. So effective leadership happens when the right leadership style is paired with the developmental level of the employee. So it's about matching developmental level to leadership. The first level being one where an employee, and I'm going to use employee or client or supervisee because that's how this has also been applied, where at the very beginning of an experience, or maybe it's just the developmental level in general of a supervisee or a client, that they say they have low competence, they don't have the skills for whatever reason to do their next step, to participate, to take on tasks or whatever. They might have a high commitment, they're here, but they need you to let them know more of what they're to do, and that's the directing leadership style. The next level of development is low to some competence, and maybe they have a low commitment. They're not really sure what to do. They don't know how to do their tasks. And your job then is to coach them through. Coach or even teach, and you'll see here in a minute that that's how it was applied to counseling. The third developmental level is moderate to high competence. People know what to do, they just aren't really sure of themselves so much. And that's that variable commitment, and that's where a supportive leadership style can be most effective with these kinds of folks. And then the last one is, again, about delegating. These are people who have the ability and they also have the commitment, and so your leadership can sort of be back off. This is how it's been applied to counseling. So same kinds of quadrants. The directiveness of the counselor is down here. And support is here. And you may have even been in these kinds of situations where instead of directing, it's telling. The next quadrant is about teaching instead of coaching. The next quadrant is supporting, same as situational leadership. And the last quadrant is about delegating, same as situational leadership. So with counseling then, situations where you might use a telling style of counseling would be with clients who don't have the skills or don't have the awareness to do what needs to be done. And in this, so for example, they might be clients who are in crisis. And clients who are in crisis typically need more direction. As clients are more ready to take on tasks, they have that commitment to do, then you're still going to potentially provide some direction and also support, so that tends to be balanced out. And then again, as folks feel more ready, still have some confidence issues, but know what to do, then how you're going to be a counselor to them is going to vary, and the same thing with delegating. So in this particular application of the situational leadership, adaptive counseling and therapy, the therapist has the role of the leader in that client-counselor relationship. Leadership, again, is defined as the process of influencing another person. And therapy, counseling, involves influencing individuals or groups to perform tasks. We want people to make progress in their work. Tasks that are set as goals for counseling. If you're in community agency, you have to write treatment plans and write goals that are congruent with where clients are. Those are the best treatment plans. So again, direction is one of the two main dimensions of this adaptive counseling and therapy model. It can also be seen as structure, direction, or task. And the focus is on the accomplishment of whatever goals or tasks that clients set in their work as clients. Direction then might vary as the client is ready and willing to work toward those tasks and goals. Support then is about support, caring, concern, approval, reinforcement of feedback or feedback from the therapist, and it also varies as the client is willing and able to work through tasks and goals. This sort of makes sense. It's a no-brainer kind of application of theory, which is why I like it. It's really pretty basic and pretty simple, but for me it was a big aha when I first learned it. So the concepts on the client, and therefore also a supervisee, is about task readiness. And there are three dimensions of task readiness. One is willingness. How willing is that person to engage in whatever the work is? The second one is ability. How competent, that was that competence issue from before. How competent are they to accomplish? Do they know how to do it? Because if somebody, if somebody didn't know how to do something, they won't do it, or they can't. And the last one is how confident are they? And this is the clients assessed, how they assess themselves, and also supervisees, their ability to take on a task. And you've worked with people, I'm sure, who have a greater level of ability, and others who don't necessarily have the ability but feel more confident. So I'm trusting that you adapted to what those folks' needs are. So the last model is how this whole theory and approach has been applied to supervision. At this point, I'm hoping that it's clear how you can apply it to supervision. The words are a little bit different, but the process is still the same. The first quadrant is, as a supervisor, you're more of a technical director. You're telling and you're directing, you're giving more information and certainly some support, but the information and telling somebody what is expected is clear in this particular quadrant. The next one is a teaching mentor. So you got the flavor of the teaching and the coaching in there. So lots of direction, lots of support, and in this case, the supervisee maybe doesn't have a whole lot of confidence, still needs to have some skills, and is ready for you to provide some of that mentoring. And then as a supervisee is more confident, they have the skills, they just need the support. My hope is that knowing this, you'll have a sense then of how to provide supervision to your intern or your practicum student. So at the beginning of the semester, you're going to provide a little bit more direction, or a lot more direction. And towards the end of a semester, a little less direction. Hopefully, your students will be taking on more tasks themselves. They're going to be telling you, oh, I'd like to be able to do this, or they've observed you in your role as a counselor and are able to say, I want to do more of that. So, this is I think a common sense kind of model for supervision, and it actually is more developmentally oriented, but it's an integrative model as well, in that you can plug in to any of these quadrants theories that you might be using or the kind of clients that you might be serving. If you have questions, you're welcome to contact me. I hope that this information has provided you with some guidelines for your work with your students. Contact me if you have questions. Thanks again for your willingness to supervise our students.